Hey you guys, it's Destiny back here with another video, and you're watching the Decimania channel here on YouTube. Got a big one for you today. I'm gonna try out my first TNA fantasy booking video. We're gonna be talking about Magnus and his TNA World Heavyweight Championship reign in 2013 and 2014. So I thought I'd try my hand out at booking this, seeing if it was good enough or better than what they did, because let's be honest with you, a lot of that had problems. A lot of what they did had problems, and we'll talk about them as we go through this video here. But first, let's kind of give a brief rundown of what actually happened. So Magnus found himself in a tournament. It was an 8-man tournament. I don't know how he got in this, I don't remember exactly, but he wasn't a former world champion, because it only consisted of former world champions. And he ends up winning the tournament. Long story short, he beats Jeff Hardy in the finals of the tournament. Now, if you don't remember, back in that time, AJ Styles had just won the world title from Bully Ray. And Dixie Carter was mad because AJ took the belt and went to Mexico and all these other places to defend it. And she decides, okay, I'll just have a tournament to crown a new world champion until you bring mine back. And then you can bring mine back. And then Magnus ended up winning it. And I like the match concept, the Dixieland match concept. I just don't like the name. And I wish the rules were a little different, but we'll talk about that. So he wins the title, he turns heel, which made no sense, and he freaking had Dixie Carter as his boss, manager, and all this other stuff. There's Rockstar Spud, who was the chief of staff, and we all know EC3, Ethan Carter, Dixie Carter's on-screen nephew, and it's like, okay, why did Magnus go from somebody who was fighting the Aces and Eights valiantly and having doubts about his career in the BFG series, and he beats Sting and kind of gets his confidence back a little, and then why go from that to being a heel within 2 months of that? That just doesn't make any sense. So he has various matches against Samoa Joe, Kurt Angle, Eric Young, and Abyss. They all had like a fatal 4-way match one time. It was like Magnus, Joe, Eric Young, and Abyss, or something like that. I don't think he defended it against Kurt Angle, did he? I don't think he did. But he beat AJ, which is fine, but I just wish it would have worked better, and there was too much interference in that match. He wins it. He wins the actual belt from AJ, and he just goes on to have this kind of lackluster, overwhelming reign as TNA World Heavyweight Champion. Now, Magnus wasn't the problem. I had no problem with Magnus as the World Champion. What I had a problem with, looking back now, Dixie Carter should not have been on screen as much. He didn't need to turn heel in the first place. Or if you wanted to turn him heel, you could have had him just kind of by himself and just have him have this overconfidence, not like this cowardly, whatever the frick he had, kind of heel run. I don't know what that was. But, it didn't fit him, so let's try to rebook this. Eric Young ended up beating him in the end for the title on a taped episode of Impact in 2014 on the April 10th edition, which I might talk about that when we get to it. That's next week, I believe. But let's try to do this. So I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was actually AJ Styles and Magnus in the finals of the Bound for Glory series, which is what I have. Here's what I have for the first thing. So this is going from the finals of the Bound for Glory series to the end of his title reign, which I ended in March because I gave him a longer title reign. Or not the end of March, but the beginning of March, whenever lockdown was. That's how long this reign goes. It goes from Bound for Glory to lockdown. Okay, so first thing I have is that it's AJ Styles and Magnus in the finals of the Bound for Glory series, which was the original thing, I think. They had their match, and AJ ends up hitting a Styles Clash on Magnus. This sends him on the outside of the ring. He's knocked into the guardrail. Magnus is down, and the Aces and Eights and Bully Ray come out and basically beat the crap out of AJ Styles. Bully hits him with a steel chain. Bully ends up leaving through the crowd. Magnus is still trying to get up from the guardrail. He gets up and sees AJ down in the ring. Doesn't see what happens because he's on the outside, the other side of the ring. Because they're like going the other way through the crowd. And he gets back to his feet, gets back in the ring, and hits AJ with a top rope elbow. And he beats AJ and goes on to the finals of the Bound for Glory series. And he goes on to challenge Bully Ray for the TNA World title. So that's what I have for the finals. The Magnus not seeing it and just getting into the series like that, that'll come later. Just for the record, I did keep him babyface during this whole thing. Now, some of you probably aren't going to like what I did with AJ, but we'll just see how it goes. So the next few weeks, hold on, I'll go back here. So this is also important too. So AJ and Magnus shake hands in the middle of the ring. And AJ leaves the ring and he's kind of like dejected, like, oh crap, that was my last shot. Because he knows that he's at the end of his contract. He knows he's got a big contract dispute coming up with Dixie Carter. Which Dixie is in this a couple times. Next couple months, I didn't really put anything other than he's just kind of trying to prepare for Aces and Eights and Bully Ray. And then finally on the Go Home show, he gets attacked by Bully Ray and the Aces and Eights after their contract signing. So this is after the contract signing, what would have been AJ and Bully in real life. I have Bound for Glory opening with AJ Styles storming out of Dixie Carter's office, and you can hear him saying as he's leaving, he says, hold on, I'm trying to think here, because he says, I hope you know what you're doing, Dixie, and then he leaves. You're gonna regret this. And he just leaves. And that's the last we see of AJ Styles for about, 2 months. We'll get to that. So AJ leaves Dixie Carter's office. The main event happens. So Sting, he's in a match with, we'll just say that AJ kind of asks for a match with Sting or something. Or asks to be on the card. I don't know what happens exactly. I don't know what Sting's doing. I didn't write anything down. But he is going to come out and help Magnus later. The Aces and Eights try to interfere, as usual. Several members of the TNA roster run down to make the save. Guys like Kurt Angle, Chris Sabin, who is a former world champion, Sting, another former world champion, Eric Young, because he was attacked by Aces and Eights earlier in last year, and he still hasn't forgotten it. And Eric Young's trying to prove himself to Dixie Carter, like, I want a title shot. And Magnus ends up beating Bully top rope elbow through a table because it is no DQ. Forgot to write that down, but it's no DQ. And this is where things get a little complicated because I had a little trouble booking his week-to-week television on-screen time, but just bear with me. Things will kind of make sense, I guess. So the following week, the show after Bound for Glory, Magnus basically is celebrating, and he promises to repay everyone who helped him at Bound for Glory. And he calls Sting, Eric Young, Chris Sabin, and Kurt Angle to the ring, and he's like, look, I'm going to give you all title shots. Thank you guys for helping me, and all that stuff. He says he's going to give each of them a title shot in turn, starting with Chris Sabin. And he says, I want to be a fighting champion. I'll defend this belt every week if I have to, starting tonight. Even after his grueling battle with Bully Ray. And he offers the first shot to Chris Sabin, which he accepts. Or wait, what do I have here? Before Sabin can accept, however, the Aces and Eights music hits, and they run down. Bully Ray demands a rematch for the world title. Magnus informs Bully that, sorry, you'll have to wait because I already gave this shot to Sabin. And he's going to give him his rematch later down the line at Turning Point, which is their next pay-per-view. I still have pay-per-view actually happening in this, not the TV specials. So later the night, Chris Sabin accepts, and he's preparing backstage when he is attacked by the Aces and Eights members, by Garrett Bischoff and Mike Knox, to be exact. Fortunately, Sabin is able to make it to his main event championship match, although Magnus is like, dude, you don't need to do this. I can give you a shot later. Go recover. But Sabin's like, no, I want this now. And Sabin insists on going through with the match, which he does. Obviously, it's not a successful title defense. The Aces and Eights run back out later. It's okay. You only have like 2 months of this. And Sabin and Magnus are shaking hands. Both of them are attacked by the Aces and Eights. And then backup comes out in the form of Sting, Eric Young, Kurt Angle, and new X Division champion Jeff Hardy, because I made him X Division champion in this. That'll come in useful kind of later. And this show goes off the air with them brawling in the crowd, both groups. This is where things get a little interesting. Magnus kind of gets furious after this. So next week, Magnus comes out, he's marching down to the ring, and he is furious. He demands that ringside cameraman to show the audience some off-air footage that was shot in the parking lot last week. The camera footage reveals that Taz is dragging a cameraman out to the backstage area into the parking lot, where the rest of the Aces and Eights members are attacking Chris Sabin with weapons. Bully Ray has a steel chain, I think, and a ball-peen hammer or whatever he wants to use, and he just takes the chain, wraps it around his fist, and just drives it into Sabin's knees. Both of his surgically repaired knees, by the way, because he has 2 ACL injuries on both of his knees. So he came back from 2 of those on both. Remember, he came back in 2013, and they just kind of put the title on him, and that'll be another one I'll do. But the security guards arrive, and damage is already done. Chris is loaded into an ambulance, so we won't see him for about a couple months, maybe. Magnus then calls out Dixie Carter and for not taking action against these guys. And he's like, why are you not doing anything about these guys? This is your company. If you don't get rid of these guys, if you don't try to get rid of these guys, there's not going to be a company for these guys to work. For anyone to work. And Dixie, she kind of just blows him off, like, yeah, I don't have time for you right now because I'm in a contract dispute. That's what she says. And that night, Magnus is like, okay, fine, I'll just defend my title again while I want you to focus on aces and eights, and I'm going to focus on defending my title. So he has a successful title defense against Sting. So that's twice he's beaten Sting. We'll find out what the other time was later. Sorry, I'm like getting ahead of myself. Over the next 2 weeks, Magnus successfully defeats Aces and Eights members Garrett Bischoff and Wes Briscoe. I left Wes in the group because I just wanted to. I don't know. I don't have Anderson in this group because I just don't think he fit. I don't know. I don't know. We'll talk about Anderson at another point, but so he beats them both in one-on-one matches. Bully Ray fails to regain the world title at Turning Point. Not much goes on between them. He just has Magnus goes and defeats two of his men, and Magnus is like, okay, let's see how good you do at Final Resolution. Or at Turning Point. So, Bully loses. Next week, after Turning Point, Magnus has another successful title defense against Kurt Angle. Same thing happens as a couple weeks ago when Sabin and Magnus were attacked. Now it's Magnus and Angle. Finally, Magnus has enough and decides to give Bully Ray one more rematch. He says, I'll give you another rematch, one more rematch only, on one condition. At Final Resolution, me and you. And he says, you put Aces and Eights career on the line, and I'll give you one more title shot. And Bully Ray accepts. Over the next few weeks, Magnus turns back challenges from James Storm and Eric Young. So James Storm kind of was like, hey, why is everyone else getting title shots? I want one. And Magnus was like, okay, fine, I'm a fighting champion, and I'll give you a title shot. I just threw James Storm in there because freaking James Storm deserved another run as champion. Great. So this is the go-home show before Final Resolution. Bully Ray and Magnus sign the contract for their final encounter. At Final Resolution, Aces and Eights they interrupt the match. Just when it looks like Magnus is going to lose the title, Sting, Kurt Angle, Eric Young, Jeff Hardy, and a returning Chris Sabin. So Sabin's kind of back. He's back. He was out for like a month. Magnus retains, obviously. Next week, Magnus lays out an open challenge for the title later that night. Bobby Roode ends up accepting it, but he fails to win the title. So I just, basically what I have happening here, I'm building up Magnus as a credible champion. He's taking on all these former world champions and beating them. While also making them look strong as well, because they're having good, classic 20-minute matches, all this stuff, and Magnus is kind of getting a level of confidence. He's not arrogant, but he's like, okay, this is what I needed to do. So next week, Dixie Carter announces the Feast or Fire. This is where it gets good. She announces the Feats are fired. Match will be the main event that night. And she also announces that there will be a masked mystery man entrant in the match. Wonder who that could be. All 4 of the briefcases are retrieved, so I didn't have him unmask in the match itself. I probably should have, but I didn't. I'm not perfect at this yet. So this one's not perfect, but I've tried my best. The contents of each will be revealed on next week's show, so that gives people something to look forward to. Sabin wins the X Division title shot. James Storm wins the tag team title shot. Austin Aries gets the pink slip. Sorry, Austin. And then the mystery man is the holder of the World Heavyweight title briefcase. Magnus meets him in the ring, and he's like, okay, you need to unmask. You need to show us who you are. And he does. And the crowd is shocked. It's none other than AJ Styles. And I ended that. He comes back and he gives Magnus a Styles Clash on the stage. And wastes no time in telling him that he will be cashing in his title shot at Lockdown. He's like, I'm giving you 2 months to prepare. And I'll see you at Lockdown. And he closes out 2013 with that statement. So that's the end of 2013. So I have him coming back earlier than he actually did. So there's going to be a little more AJ in this. Because for this to work, I'm just telling you right now. People probably aren't going to like what I did with AJ Styles. But it works for this, for what I wanted to do. So, because of AJ's attack, Magnus is out of action for the next month. And Sting will reveal that in a couple weeks. The next week after AJ's attack on Magnus, AJ opens the show to explain his attack and why he's been away for the last 2 months in 2013. He explains that he was in a contract dispute with Dixie Carter, and he blames Dixie for not adding him to the world title match at Bound for Glory. So they obviously came up with a solution. So the solution is, if AJ fails to win the world title, that's it. He's done. So that's kind of why I kind of wanted to keep the timeline a little bit on the reality side, but I gave AJ, she gave AJ like one of those deals where, I'll let you stay. You're not going to be under contract for the next 2 months. I'm going to only give you a 1-night contract for Lockdown, and if you beat Magnus, then I'll extend it, and I'll give you a proper contract. So she basically kind of says that, and, AJ's like, why didn't you put me in the match of Bound for Glory? You saw what Magnus did, and Dixie's like, he won that fair and square. Like, she's not a heel in this, but she's kind of just, I don't know what she is exactly. She's just Dixie, and I kind of kept her off screen as much as possible with this, because it's not about Dixie, it's about Magnus. I just threw the contract thing in there as a side story. And he's like, well, you should have just put me in there. And he claims that it should have been him in the world title match again instead of Magnus. Magnus is too green. Next week, it's kind of more of the same from AJ. He kind of just says, that Magnus is inexperienced, and he's not credible as TNA World Heavyweight Champion, and the fans don't really buy this, even though Magnus actually got over with the crowd while AJ's been away, and I think he's jealous of that because, you know, how they were kind of hesitant at first a little bit, but then he started defending the title and racking up wins and all that stuff, and now they're kind of like, oh, he's kind of pretty good. So, you know, he basically says to the fans, like, you guys really don't like him. You're kind of just jumping on the bandwagon of whatever Dixie Carter's giving you guys. You guys don't really believe this, even though the opposite is true. Like, Dixie didn't have anything to do with Magnus winning the title. He won it on his merits alone. And, you know, AJ calls Magnus a coward and challenges him to show up next week. He continues to insult the champ until he is confronted by Sting. Sting informs AJ, like, you gave him a concussion. You gave him a mild concussion and he will be out. Because of that, he would be out for a month. And he's like, I'm not happy with what you did to him because he earned my respect the night that he eliminated me from the Bound for Glory series. Because it was Sting that got eliminated by Magnus. Because back when Magnus was having his doubts and stuff, Sting was like, okay, well, it's me and you in the Bound for Glory series. Let's see how good you can get this. And Magnus beat him, eliminated him. And Styles fires back at Sting, and he's like, well, why are you defending him? Like, he was the one, like you said, he eliminated you. And he doesn't deserve to be called champion. And, you know, him and Sting, they kind of have words on the mic, and Sting tells AJ that he respects him, or respects Magnus, for standing his ground against the Aces and Eights. Like, where were you? You were dealing with your own problems with Christopher Daniels and Kazarian, and you didn't want to help anybody. You just wanted to do things for yourself. You had one bad year, and you just decided to give it up. You had one bad contract dispute, and you didn't want to come and help Magnus fight the fight against Aces and Eights. You know, Sting tells him, like, you were being kind of selfish, AJ. You know, AJ tries to drive a wedge between Magnus and Sting, and their friendship by pointing out that, you know, Sting was defeated by Magnus. Again, keeps bringing that home in the Bound for Glory series, and that his victory caused Sting to be eliminated. And Sting's like, yeah, I told him to prove himself, and that's what he did. I don't care. And then he points out that Sting hasn't been on much of a winning streak here lately, has he? And so AJ's like, well, I challenge you to a match next week, and if you can beat me, then maybe I'll have a little more respect for you and for Magnus. And Sting accepts, but AJ says, I don't want just any match. I want you to put your career on the line. And I'll put my Feast or Fire contract on the line so you can have a shot at the world title. And he reminds him of the title shot that he had, or that he gave him at Bound for Glory 2009. And he said, remember, you were contemplating retirement then. And Sting failed to dethrone AJ that night and was contemplating retirement. And, you know, he puts the Feast or Fire title shot on the line, and Sting accepts the challenge. Sting accepts the match, and the match is set for next week's Impact. So this is where AJ just gets freaking brutal. So next week, it's Sting versus AJ Styles. Title shot versus career. Sting puts up a good fight, but AJ is pretty relentless. He is pretty incensed. He becomes incensed and just brutalizes Sting with his own baseball bat. You know, it's not no DQ, but AJ doesn't freaking care. you know, he doesn't have a contract. He can do whatever he wants. Beats the crap out of him with his baseball bat, all while looking into the camera and verbally, taunting Magnus, like, come out here. I know you're not really injured. I know Sting's just sticking up for you. Get out here, Magnus. And AJ finally just wins the match and mercifully pins Sting, or makes Sting tap out with the Scorpion, rather. On the next Impact, Sting is given a big send-off, and he thanks the fans for all the support over the years, and the roster for sharing the ring with him. And the locker room empties out to send him off and bid him farewell, as Sting is preparing to leave the arena. However, AJ is again attacking him. AJ just won't stop. He just won't stop. He keeps attacking attacking Sting. On the entrance ramp, he gives Sting a Styles Clash, just like he did to Magnus. AJ beats him down and gives him a Styles Clash on the exposed concrete. Styles looks into the camera and he tells Magnus, this is going to happen to you when I see you next time. I'm going to do this to you. You better be watching this. Watch what I do to your friend, your mentor, whatever. He just won't stop. Sting makes his way to his feet and tries to leave the arena again, but AJ continues his assault. They fight all the way to the backstage area, and AJ clobbers Sting with a steel chair. Sting is stretchered out of the building. A car pulls up to the arena in the parking lot, and as Sting is being loaded into the ambulance, the car door opens and Magnus emerges from the driver's seat. So Magnus has returned from his, he went home. It's a mild concussion. It wasn't anything too bad, but the doctor said he shouldn't be there for like a month. Magnus spots AJ and he tries to leave, but Magnus tracks him down, chases him into the arena, and they go all the way to the ring. Magnus grabs a microphone and says, alright, that's it. I'm challenging you next week, not to a title match, but to a street fight. Or to an I Quit match. And AJ accepts. And Magnus is like, you shouldn't have done that to my friend. I watched what happened. I know what happened. I know you were calling me out. You knew I couldn't be there because I had a concussion. Sting told you, and you still continue to call me out. Styles says, fine, we'll have an I Quit match next week, and it's on. So AJ wins the I Quit match. It's a pretty brutal match, but AJ wins it, and he gets in Magnus' head. And he's like, you forgot, I'm 4-0 in this type of match. Now 5-0, because I just beat you. And that's what I'm going to do to you at Lockdown. So, against all odds, and, this is on the, an episode of Impact, and, on that same show, as a side note, Chris Sabin cashes in his Feast or Fired X Division title shot and defeats Jeff Hardy to regain the X Division Championship. So I was gonna have Jeff Hardy cash in his title shot, but then I remembered, oh crap, you have AJ cashing in his title shot as well, so you don't want to do that. So I was gonna have him just hand over the X Division title, but Sabin already has the briefcase anyway, so might as well just have him cash in his title shot and beat Jeff Hardy. So now Jeff Hardy kind of gets inserted into this. I almost said insulted. Sorry. So on next week's show, Dixie Carter puts a no contact rule in place between AJ Styles and Magnus if they touch each other, if they get involved in each other's matches, the match is off, and AJ does not get his title shot, and Magnus will be stripped of the title. She also announces a number one contenders battle royal for the next week's episode. Next week, Magnus and AJ choose each other's opponent. AJ chooses Chris Sabin to face Magnus in a champion versus champion match, and Magnus chooses Kurt Angle to face AJ Styles. Familiar opponent for AJ, I figured it would be a pretty good match, so I just did that. You know, both AJ and Magnus win their respective matches. Jeff Hardy ends up winning he wins the number one contenders battle royal, and he wants to be added to, he tells Dixie, like, I want to be added to this match. I want to be added to the AJ and Magnus match. I don't want to wait until one of them wins it. I want to be in this match for the title at Lockdown, and he is granted the chance to make that happen as long as he can beat AJ Styles on next week's show. So he beats AJ, and that kind of just makes AJ mad. He's like, okay, fine, I'll take both of you out then. And yeah, the more people I have to take out, the better. Fine. And Jeff is added to the world title match of Lockdown in 2 weeks. AJ and Magnus are kind of so focused on each other that they really don't even care that Jeff Hardy's in this. So they don't see this stipulation coming that's about to be added. So Jeff Hardy comes out to the ring with Dixie Carter, and Lockdown's already a steel cage match pay-per-view anyway. So on the Go Home Impact for Lockdown, AJ Styles and Magnus are having their contract signing, and when Jeff Hardy comes to the ring, it reminds both of them that, they're having their contract signing, and Jeff Hardy comes to the ring and reminds them that he is also in the match as well before he signs his name on the contract. And Magnus and AJ are just kind of like, oh, okay, forgot about you, but okay, whatever. And, you know, like I said, they're kind of just so focused on each other. Like, Jeff Hardy's a former world champion, too, so, you know. Jeff explains that he and Dixie Carter decided to add a little twist to the steel cage match. He says, okay, Magnus, I know you've never really been in one of these, but I know AJ's been in a couple, but we're going to put a ladder in this steel cage. And he says, the way you win this match is you got to climb the ladder, get the belt off of the hook, but just because the person has it, once the belt's down, it's anybody's game. They can walk out with it. They just got to get the belt down, and then next thing you do, next person, or the person that has the belt, can walk out of the steel cage with it. You know, that happens, and you know, you gotta go over the top of the cage and drop down, or you can go through the door. Okay, here we go, final stretch. The main event of Lockdown is a triple threat match between the defending world champion Magnus and the two challengers, Jeff Hardy and AJ Styles. The Feast or Fired contract has been cashed in. The three men are throwing everything at each other. AJ is able to grab the title, but Magnus uses the ladder to block the door. So Magnus kind of blocks the door with the ladder, and you know, there's a mutual agreement between Jeff Hardy and Magnus. Like, look, AJ's not walking out of here with this belt, because I don't like, neither of them like his actions, because Jeff Hardy was a huge fan of Sting's growing up, so to them, that's personal, and Magnus also, you know. Jeff Hardy and Magnus team up to take out AJ before focusing on fighting each other. They go for about like 20 minutes. The match was like 30 minutes, 35 minutes, 40 minutes, something like that. I don't know what happens, but you know, for a while they just keep beating the crap out of each other, and Jeff Hardy gives Magnus a twist of fate onto the ring post, hits AJ with a swanton bomb off the top of the cage, and he walks out with the world title. So he takes Magnus out. Magnus is knocked out from the steel post shot, and AJ gets swanton bombed through a ladder, nonetheless. And Magnus, he's able to recover, and he presents Jeff Hardy with the title belt himself to close out Lockdown and an incredible TNA World title reign. So that's kind of what happens. I mean, I didn't book this perfectly. It's kind of my first one, so bear with me. If you guys liked it, let me know in the comments. If you didn't like it, let me know in the comments. What did you like about it? What did you not like about it? You know, I know some people are probably going to be upset with me for the AJ thing, but again, I'm not perfect. I tried to base this around kind of his timeline, because he wasn't there in 2014. I mean, there really wasn't much left for him to do. Like, kind of wanted him to put over Magnus. I was going to just have him be him and Magnus. I guess I could have just done that, but then again, AJ was the heel, and I was going to end the title reign there. So I just threw Jeff Hardy in there to kind of, you know, be kind of a curveball. And I got that stipulation in there and changed it a little bit, so it was actually pretty good. I mean, the actual match itself between Jeff Hardy and Magnus for the interim title was pretty good when they had that stipulation, but I kind of wanted it to mean a little more, you know, for the actual title. So that's how I would book Magnus World Heavyweight Championship reign. There is another scenario that I would have done with Dixie Carter involved. So I would have done the original spot, like what they did. You know, had AJ leave with the belt and everything. So Magnus doesn't win the Bound for Glory series. AJ does. And he takes the belt and leaves like in real life. And then Magnus wins the interim title against Jeff Hardy. But he does it as a babyface. And he goes to Dixie and he's like, I can't do this. I've got to beat AJ. No disrespect to Jeff Hardy, but I've got to beat AJ Styles for this title. And like, have it be where he's trying to get Dixie to let AJ come back and defend the belt against him. And then he personally contacts AJ and he's like, look, I've got to do this against you. You need to come back. You know, that's how I would have done it. Both times keeping him babyface, because I kind of like, I mean, I guess now it would work if Magnus was the heel, but back then I don't know, his booking was kind of from there on out. Like, you can have somebody have the greatest moment in wrestling history, but if you don't have a great follow-up to it, then, you know, what's it really doing for anybody? So I made Magnus a credible champion while giving AJ his title match, having Jeff Hardy involved in it, because, I mean, let's just freaking face it, Jeff Hardy is great. And I kind of tied in the original match stipulation to that, so I kind of kept some stuff from the original booking. But, you know, I'm sorry I didn't have Samoa Joe or Abyss in there. You guys can fantasy book that if you'd like. But, it was a fun his title reign could have been a lot better, and I tried to book it as strongly as possible. You know, again, I kept Dixie Carter off screen as much as possible, but, you know, I had to keep her in there for a few things. But other than that, I don't know, did I do a good job or not? Did I do better than they did? Did I do worse than they did? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you guys, I don't know, probably Monday. We'll review WrestleMania 13. And then on Tuesday, I have a discussion video that I'll talk about. I have a couple topics I want to talk about, but I don't know which one yet. But yeah, that's gonna be it for me, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good night, peace, and God bless. By the way, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell, all that fun stuff. But enjoy the rest of your night.